Throughout YouTube, there are many different types of content you'll find on this website. They can all span to comedy, to education, to horror. And one of the main and oldest genre of horror that YouTube has in this platform is creepypastas. Creepypastas, or horror internet stories, are shared through forums, social medias, or websites dedicated to it, but creepypastas were really big on YouTube back in the early 2010s. You had creepypastas like Candle Cove, a story based on forum users sharing their experience of a show they watched as they were children, reminiscing their old childhood fears about the show. However, the more they remember of the show, it is revealed that they had more dark and disturbing elements from what they remembered, until at the very end where it's revealed that the show may have never existed in the first place. Or at least as I interpret it. Another creepypasta I would like to mention is Ben Drown. Even though Ben Drown does the whole old man sells me haunted game cliche, it was one of the very few creepypastas that have footage of the video game being haunted, which made it really stand out since all the creepy elements that are shown in the story are brought to life, instead of text on the screen saying like,
Ben, it's the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one. And then, when he gets bored, he drags you into the game. Literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you, always as his toy.
You may be wondering why I mention these old creepypastas. Well, the thing is, they all have one thing in common, and it's their titles. Their titles are very short and give you just enough information on what the story will be about, but never enough that it becomes a summary of it. They sound eerie and mysterious. Their titles make you question what will happen in the story and entices you to read it. And once you read the story, you understand why the author chose it. You see, creepypastas are horror stories, and stories with these titles sound like clickbait YouTube titles than creepypasta titles. Unless that was what the authors of these stories were going for, but why make it a creepypasta when there are other forms of creepypastas like trollpastas dedicated to these kinds of jokes? Now you may be thinking, Delio, these could all just be trollpasta titles or crappypasta titles, not actual creepypasta titles. And, I would agree the same thing, but the thing is, no they're not. They're not even from the creepypasta website. Most of these stories are from Reddit No Sleep, which explains a lot. But it's not the first time Reddit ruins something. But since most of these are seen as creepypastas on YouTube, I will refer to it as creepypastas, or modern day creepypastas. As much as I'm in denial, it seems like everyone else accepts it. Now you see, my main problem aren't the stories, but their titles. Whether the titles are like the stupidest sentence you can imagine, or really long, or just spoil the whole damn story, modern day creepypastas have bad titles. So let's do a little compare and contrast between old and modern creepypasta titles. Now, it may sound like I'm nitpicking, but hear me out. In most medias of entertainment, whether it be games, movies, or books, how many titles do you see like these? I'd imagine none because it's bad, forgettable, and most importantly, long. If you haven't noticed, in most popular series, franchise, or whatever, they usually have the shortest titles. Why do they use the shortest titles? Simple. It's more memorable, it's short, and it's sweet. I could name a lot of franchises with a lot of short titles, but here's an example of a few.
All of the Call of Duty games. The Dark Knight. 50 Shades of Grey. Tetris. Alien. Moby Dick. Batman Arkham Asylum. The Sopranos. Of Mice and Men. Minecraft. Up. The Big Night series. Limbo. Ratatouille. To Kill a Mockingbird. And many more.
Now, there are some cases for franchises with long titles I could make an exception for, but if their titles were shortened, I think it would benefit the series as a whole. Titles are very, very important for your stories. It's like an open window for your readers to know what your story is going to be about. You want to give enough information that it interests your reader, but not enough for them to know your entire story before they read it. I cannot express how important it is to have your reader know less about your story. You see, humans are very scared of things they don't understand or know. It's like a primal thing in our psyche. So, in your horror story, you want to use that to your advantage as much as you can. That is why stories with titles like Abandoned by Disney is a good title for the story. It gives you an idea that something was abandoned by Disney, and then you start to wonder why they abandoned it, and it interests you. But you don't get that kind of feeling if you read a title like, if you find a VHS tape titled Professor Egghead's Adventure, don't watch it. You can spoil the whole story to the reader. This gives people the idea that, oh, something horrific is on that tape, and the author will detail the show and its episodes with dark and disturbing elements, and then they will not bother watching it. A better title for this will be Professor Egghead's Adventure, or The VHS Tape. It's short, simple, and it's sweet, and most importantly, it's not a buzzkill. It doesn't make the story predictable. No, these are just titles I thought of after thinking for 15 seconds. But if you put the time and, dare I say, effort into telling your creepypastas, I do truly believe they would benefit from it. But if you just choose to title your creepypastas like a J-Station video, I don't think people will take it seriously from you. I mean, just look at this playlist I found. It has many creepypastas with titles like these. Titles that confuse or mislead readers is a common problem in literature. So it's very important that once the reader finishes reading your story, they will understand why you chose that title. This is actually something modern day creepypastas do really well at. The same with old pasta as well. However, modern day creepypastas can do better than this. Your title should not be a sentence long for your stories. At most, your title should only be 4 words long. Let me tell you something. My favorite creepypasta has a title that's only 2 words long. It's also very short, so I'll be reading it as well. Hope you enjoy. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decides to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing area. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door wide open. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on a single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the inside of the cabin, he was very surprised to see the walls adorned by several portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they all appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable, making a considerate effort to ignore the many hateful faces. He turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a deep slumber. The next morning, however, the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. Hope you all know why it's my favorite. Now, I'm not saying that every story needs to be a paragraph long or have one-word titles. There's many creepypastas that do that as well, and they're very good. I'm saying that no title should be a sentence long that spoils the whole story before anybody reads it. But at the end of the day, I'm just a stranger on the internet complaining about stories on the web. Nobody asks for my opinions or write-in advice, and everybody just wants Undertale Iceberg Explained Part 3. That being said, thank you for those who sat through this video, and I hope to see you again.